My name's GuyKesTV. I've been a professional mountain bike tester for over 20 years, and today I've been riding around the fantastic Lazer Wolf Tracks trails with Joe Barnes from Hazzard Racing. Both of us on the brand new 2020 Orange 5. So make sure you watch the live ride review that I've put together on that bike, because it's a cracking watch, because you get to see Joe riding and me blathering on about what makes this such an evergreen trail bike. But you might find it easy to understand when you're not watching the stuff on screen. So this is the technical talk round that goes with that video. As you can see, not a lot structurally has changed with the Orange 5. It went through a big revision last time with a whole new set of tubes and profiles, a lot more detailing. You can see, they've all, there's a lot more detail in here in terms of how each tube is formed, and they're all folded. They're all, if you can see, there's a massive seam underneath because all of the Orange full suspension bikes are still handmade in Halifax, machine cut and stamped into the sheet. There's a build video elsewhere on my site. I'll put a link to it in a card if I remember. But basically, all the frames still handmade in Halifax. And although single pivot swing arms are often seen as very simple layout, this is a very, very evolved suspension layout, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But also the amount of detailing, the amount of there's processes that go into each of these frames. Each section of the frames, even the bits you can't see inside this like box section head of the swing arm here, it's all like relieved and coined out inside. And it's full of that little extra gussets, and they're all beautifully hand welded in Halifax. And it's actually a really, really thin wall aluminium tube set they're using. So weights, even though, full alloy bike, weights are still competitive with a lot of carbon bikes. And you're also getting like a resilience and a life to the bike that you're just not going to get from your average generic carbon bike. I mean, this complete bike, RS spec in a large, comes in at 13.7 kilos with, wide tyres, and that's a pretty chunky spec. All right, mate. There's other details that you can't even see. I mean, the fact that the paint is hand done in Halifax. They've got their own paint booth. They use a really, really thick powder coating system. So the paint's super durable. I've had oranges as long-termers, and they just take an absolute beating without even flinching in terms of paintwork. And also, they're meticulously hand-aligned before they go for heat treatment. And then as soon as they come back from heat treatment, they go for another. They're all aligned again by lads who have been building these bikes for donkey's years. So, and actually speaking to Orange raised an interesting point. Because you've only got this one single pivot, and because it just runs through this axle through the centre, there's no way you can fudge that alignment. Linkages and stuff like that let you package the back end, let you put in a spacer here and there if the tolerances aren't quite right. There's none of that caper with a single pivot. You've just got to get it absolutely bang on. So you're talking micron tolerances with this pivot here. And anyway, the whole Orange family in general, because there's plenty of them now. I mean, this 5 is still like the kind of linchpin all-rounder of the design with the 27.5 wheels. But there's now the new Switch, which is 27.5 rear, 29 front. There's the whole series of Stages bikes, which are all 29ers. There's the Orange Alpine, which has just had a slight revision as well. Yeah. Obviously, you can find out about them, and hopefully we'll be getting them on for video shortly. But, so what's changed with the Orange for this year? Starting from the front, head tube angle has come back a degree to 65 degrees, so more stable. Cable routing has moved up the down tube, so it doesn't get in the way of your knees anymore, which was a bit irritating previously. Top tubes get longer, 10mm longer on all sizes. Plus, there's now an XXL frame option. At the rear, you've got a Super Deluxe shock now on this spec, but it's a longer shaft length, and also the main pivot has moved slightly down, slightly backwards, so it's nearer the chainring. And that all means that rear travel is now 145mm, and it's matched to 150mm fork. So as Adam from Orange put it when he dropped the bike off of me, there's just more 5 than there was before. It's slightly more relaxed at the front, it's longer, so it's more stable, and the suspension is I wouldn't say more neutral, because there's still a fair amount of pedal pull back on it, but I'm not going to go into that here. Just watch the live ride video. I think that's still a really, really good thing, because it gives the Orange a super characterful ride and really gives you a lot more rider input into it than you'd get from a standard just neutral linkage bike. These bikes are really involving, really fun, so please watch the live ride video. Anyway, back to spec. The back end is still really short. It's a 433mm back end, although as you can see, you've got vast amounts of room, even with a 2.4 inch tyre out there. And I mean, as you can see, it's just such a simple, clean bike for cleaning simply, I guess, which is why they're so popular in England, where, you know, and Scotland, Wales, etc., where the weather is just filthy and you just want a bike that just lasts and lasts and lasts. Super high quality main pivot, and it's just a simple job to put another one in there when that one eventually wears out. But these are just such a workhorse frame. Even these new lighter, longer, you know, more capable oranges, they just, you know, they're still always designed to take a beating, even if they are a lot lighter than they used to be. And because literally the factory is below where they design and CAD all the frames on the computers, any changes they want to make just happen instantly. So it might look like a layout that's been around for donkey's years, but they are constantly evolving far faster probably than any other brand, especially one that has to commit to carbon molds and then like get their money's worth out of them for the next 2 or 3 years. In terms of other features, you've still got a ISCG mount down there, but under here, you now have a bottle cage mount. Still not the best placed in terms of spray being thrown up onto it, but they obviously haven't got room. They used to in the old days have a bottle cage up here, but they haven't got room for that now. But plenty of room for a piggyback shock. And if you did want a bottle dodown there, or you want to put a storage keg on it, you've now got a bottle mount under there. The other geometry change is it now sits lower between the axles, so it's a 329mm BB height. It's kind of awkward to see because it's suspending here, but this is now quite a low slung bike. But dynamically, what's interesting is because the suspension generally gets lifted up if you're really pedaling hard, you know, there is that slight, you know, the chain shortens, it brings the swing arm down slightly. Even having that low BB height doesn't smack on the ground as much as you'd expect, and as much as it probably would on a more neutral bike that would stay low when you're pedaling. So, and again, because the seat angle is 74 degrees, but because as you pedal, the suspension tends to extend if you're really going hard. Again, it makes this exactly when you want a steeper pedaling position, when you're, you know, probably max torque up a really, really steep climb, it naturally does that. And I think I said in a live ride review, it's a really kind of symbiotic relationship. That sounds a bit Radio 4, sounds a bit posh, but that's exactly what it does. When you pedal hard, the suspension gets stiffer. When you drop your heels and relax, the suspension gets more plush. When you brake hard, it kind of shifts the weight forward. It, you know, puts more pressure onto the fork, so you've got more grip on the front tyre, which does more braking and more turning. And I mean, you know, obviously I'm putting a positive spin on it because I really, really like that aspect of it in a world when there's so many just kind of very, very competent but quite characterless bikes. It's great to have one that's so involving. And I always come away from testing an orange really, really wanting to own one and hang on to one as long as possible. And I'd absolutely say that again with this one. You know, I'm going to keep this one in custody for as long as I can. But there are obvious, you know, downsides to it if you don't like kickback through your pedals. You know, if you find that irritating, that is going to irritate. It's still, you know, obviously going to be irritating because it happens. There is brake jack, which kind of disturbs the angles of it. It's not the most planted and stable bike in terms of yaw and pitch, but it just gives you way more to work with, and it just kind of adds more excitement to every element of the trail, in my view. But, you know, that's a personal opinion, and what I would suggest you do is watch the live ride review and see just how capable it is, not in terms of me riding it, but if you watch Joe in front of me on the video, you'll see this bike is an absolute pinner and still super playful. You know, that extra length, that extra confidence in the head angle has definitely not made it a dull bike. This is still a really, really fun play bike, really great trail bike that makes those slightly smaller 27.5 wheels. So that's the essence of the bike, and that's the frame, which is obviously the heart of the bike. So let's talk about spec. This RS version gets Pike Ultimate up front with a Charger 2.1 damper, which is glorious. 150mm of travel, beautifully controlled, really, really supple off the top, and then just loads of mid-stroke control for really pushing it hard through turns. And it feels rock solid. There's a tendency to go to like a Yari or Lyric on any aggressive bike at the moment, but Pike's significantly lighter, and it is, you know, I've probably put into some situations up here following Joe on black trails. Hasn't flinched at all. I've been crapping myself, but the fork's like, nah, we got this, don't worry, fine. Rear shock is RockShox Super Deluxe, so again, longer stroke, 55mm stroke now. You've got the piggyback reservoir for extra oil capacity, so it doesn't heat up on long descents. You've got two compression modes as standard, locked and then open. But to be honest, it climbs so well. The fact that the suspension stiffens and lifts slightly, I've never gone anywhere near the climb switch so far. You've got low speed compression and you got rebound on there as well. I mean, although this new pivot that's moved down and back a bit it also gives a more progressive shock stroke. I would actually maybe go a little more progressive. I've maybe put a couple of spacer or two back in the shock just to keep the travel ring more in the center, because pretty much every run it was down at the bottom and I ended up about 25% sag. So potentially I'd even go more progressive on it, because, you know, certainly if you wanted to sit more in the mid stroke, maybe add a volume spacer in there, but at least you're in a position that you can do that. It's not like already like, oh, it's way more progressive than I want to be, and there's no way of making it less progressive. It's, I mean, they're a super simple bike to tune in terms of shocks, because basically it is just a hinge. You know, the shock is doing everything. So whatever you do to the shock is quite significant and is easy to trace. But on the other hand, because how your body weight movement and how your braking inputs, how your suspension inputs also change the way the suspension handles, is also, you know, you can kind of almost manage the damping and shock behavior through the way you ride the bike as well. You've got Maxxis Minion DHF 27.5 2.5 Max Terra front tire, and then you've got a DHR Exo Protection 2.4 rear tire. So super grippy, maximum control tires either end. Orange moves to E13 rims from Raceface this year. I've not ridden the E13 much, but according to their testing, they're just a little bit tougher. The Racefaces were pretty soft, so if it's an upgrade as far as Orange are concerned, I'm willing to take their word for it. Those guys ride pretty damn hard. RS spec is XO with a descendant carbon crank, and then this bike also has Hope upgrade kit pack, which is very, very common on Oranges. Hope are literally just over the hill. Well, in English terms, they're just over the hill in Lancashire. And again, you know, great tradition of handmade in-house componentry. So you've got the Tech 3 levers on E4 brakes, loads of adjustment, super reliable, not the most powerful brake, and, you know, they can be pretty hard on your arms on extended descents. But in terms of reliability and product support, just fantastic. And they come in loads of colours, which, to be honest, is why most people probably choose Hope, just because they've got such a great reputation for backup, and because you can, you know, dial in your own custom colour palette. Super short Hope stem to go with that. It's a Cane Creek headset, but you can also opt for a Hope headset if you want. Renthal fat bar, 35mm alloy bar, 780mm wide, so tons of sort of power assistant leverage there. Moving back, although RS doesn't totally stand for RockShox on this bike, because you've got this Raceface trigger operating a Fox transfer post, but that's fine by me, to be honest, because the transfer is absolutely rock solid in terms of dropper post. SDG custom orange strange saddle on the top, orange strange diamond pattern grips, and you've got Hope hubs front and rear. So again, super reliable hubs. Bit noisy, and the fact that you've got a hollow swing arm on it amplifies that noise as well, but pickup is quicker than it used to be. Noise isn't as much of an issue as it used to be. And again, it's just kind of like, you know, Hope and Orange just traditionally go together really well in terms of providing a super reliable complete bike package. Hopefully that's covered up everything on the basic rundown. In terms of geometry, in terms of componentry, and in terms of why the bike rides like it does. If you want to see the bike actually being ridden, then check out my live ride review, which I've done with Joe from Hazzard Racing, who's back on Orange. I mean, he started on Orange, went to Canyon for a while, and now he's back on Orange and he's absolutely loving it. So, what else do I need to do? I need to thank people behind Lag and Trail Centre. An absolutely fantastic day here today, and the veggie nachos are absolutely amazing, and a cup of tea ain't bad either. And of course a full range of Tunnux energy products, as it's Scotland. Thanks to Crud for supplying the fender, thanks to Crank Brothers for the pedals, thanks to Louri for the essential Endura frame strap, which I have beautifully accessorised, as you can see. Thanks to Endura for the kit. and for Camelbak for the bum bag, Ion for the shoes, and RockShox for the RS spec socks. But most of all, thanks to you guys for watching. Thanks to Orange for supporting this video edit, and also thanks to my Patreon supporters, my subscribers who contribute monthly towards kind of the admin and the daily running of the channel. That means they get exclusive early edits on all the testing features. They got a load of behind the scenes stuff as well. So please consider joining them on Patreon. There's a list of my top subscribers scrolling through now, but if you'd like to join them, that would be fantastic. It just means I can do more with the channel and devote more time to it. And I really want to grow the channel, because this is what I love doing, talking about bikes, using 20 years of expertise to be as honest as possible and fill you in on why bikes ride like they do and why bikes like this will suit you. Because if you are a rider who really likes to be involved in the ride and just likes consistent good times on the trails, then there's not much to match a super tough, super communicative, just all-round fun time play bike like this Orange 5. Yeah, absolutely loved riding it again today, and like I say, I always come away from riding an Orange with a grin, always. So, thanks for your time. I've been GuyKesTV, this has been GuyKesTV, and that is the 2020 Orange 5 RS.